Now I hear that the people of Taiwan are very good listeners. They're also very good at following instructions. So I would like to put that to the test. Could you all please stand up? Could you all please stand up? Thank you. Now I want you to stand behind your chair. You have to stand up, please, Professor Baranda. You stand behind your chair. And I want you to do this. Stretch. And then behind you. Oh, stretch. Stretch. And then turn around. Please turn around. And then sit down. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ni hao. Moya e Maui. Moya e Maui is how we greet each other on Rotuma, a Polynesian island 300 miles north of Fiji and my original homeland. This greeting literally translates as, "Thank you for your life." Let me change that to "Thank you for your lives," all of you attending this important conference. Your presence brings much prestige, and your knowledge has enriched and will continue to enrich our discussions at this conference. I want to thank the organizers and funders for bringing us all together from far and near, and for all the hard work in putting together this landmark event. If I can mention the Taipei Ritchie Institute, the Taiwan Society for Pacific Studies, and the Council of Indigenous Peoples, amongst others. I also want to thank June Lee in particular. She has been in touch with me over several months now, and I must admit to being impressed by her negotiation skills. Without her tenacity, efficiency, and diplomatic skills, I would not be here. June, Koyatsu, which means language, thank you. Sheshe. In this short presentation, I want to reflect upon the work and the words of the late Professor Ipili Hau'ofa of Tonga, the man whose job I have now inherited, and the man whose name has been invoked quite a few times by previous speakers. In my opinion, Ipili was, and still is, the most influential thinker in the field of Pacific Studies for the past 20 years or so. He didn't write all that much: a comic novel, a collection of satirical short stories, a slim volume on his research, and a number of essays. But whatever he wrote was remarkable because of its perceptive and inspired visionary take on oceanic life. Although his fiction is more entertaining than his other works, I want to highlight his essays, most of which have been published under the title "We Are the Ocean, Selected Works." That's Ipili there. If you're not familiar with Ipili's writing, I would encourage you to buy yourself a copy of "We Are the Ocean" and read it before you go to bed at night, and as soon as you get up in the morning. I did that last night and this morning as well, and I am the better for it. But be careful. It is the kind of book that could possess you, which is what happened to me this morning. My alarm went off, I jumped out of bed, showered, and got ready for breakfast, only to realize that my iPhone was still in Fiji time, and that the correct time in Taiwan was 1 a.m. Yes, 1 in the morning. So what was I to do, all dressed up and nowhere to go? I took out my speech, and in rereading it, found myself rewriting it like a man possessed by Ipili's spirit. I guess it's all this talk about shamanism. Well, they say in many parts of Polynesia that around 2 or 3 in the morning is when the spirit world is most active, and I can vouch for that. According to my abstract, I was supposed to talk more about nuts, but it really wanted me to talk more about himself. How could I refuse the man? And took me in a different direction. But being a spirit, he knows more than I do what our needs are at this conference, particularly so late in the day, and I'm quite happy to be guided by him. I should mention that Billy died about 2 years ago, and that I get no royalties for recommending his book, just in case you were wondering. In 1997, Billy founded the Oceania Center for Arts and Culture at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. Billy's vision for the center is that it would become a safe and protected space where artists, painters, dancers, woodcarvers, sculptors, and musicians particularly could come together to create original works of art without fear or prejudice. 13 years later, the center has acquired a reputation for the development, the creation, and promotion of innovative and original art, particularly in the area of contemporary dance, music, and painting. It has also grown in terms of its physical and human resources, and now it has become a vital and dynamic center, not just at USP, but increasingly for the rest of Oceania as well. Owned by 12 nations within our Steel Islands, a phrase made popular by hau'ofa in his influential essay of the same title, USP is one of only 2 universities in the world, the other being the University of the West Indies, that can be said to be truly regional, with 14 campuses spread out over an ocean that covers 1/3 of the Earth's surface. Students at USP are drawn mainly from USP's owner countries, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Marshall Islands, Niue, Tokelau, Cook Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, and Tuvalu. And the result is a very diverse student body. It is no surprise then that since its humble beginnings in 1968, the creation of a regional identity at USP, instead of a narrow and nationalistic one, has always been very challenging. Ugly incidents of brawls between certain ethnic groups, such as Tongas versus Samoans, ultimately led to USP's leaders abolishing its once popular Pacific Week, when cultural groups on campus performed their dances and demonstrated aspects of their cultures with pride and sometimes with defiance. Today, although ethnic dancers can still be seen on campus and students still tend to hang out and socialize according to their own cultural groups, the ugly brawls of former years seem to have disappeared. Instead, what has emerged is a regional identity based firmly on traditional cultures of our ancestors, but free of the shackles, as well as those of former colonial powers. This has come about mainly because of efforts to encourage students to form social groups according to interests, rather than culture. Leading the creation of this regional identity was, and is, the Oceania Center, where students from different ethnic backgrounds can be seen working and playing together. The Oceania Center therefore provides a model for the creation of identities that are open and fluid, instead of closed and unchanging. And here is the slide of the Oceania Dance Theater that has made quite a name for itself. And here are pictures of different kinds of art that you see at the Oceania Center. Taking its cue from the vast and ever-flowing Pacific Ocean, whose waters wash and crash on the whole Pacific Rim from Antarctica to New Zealand, Australia, Southeast and East Asia, and right around to the Americas, the Oceania Center in Fiji draws its inspiration not just from within Oceania, but also from Asia and the Americas. In hau'ofa's words, the Oceania Center promotes the kind of identity, and I quote, that transcends all forms of insularity to become one that is openly searching, inventing, and welcoming. Hau'ofa's vision focuses on the vast ocean and not on the small islands that our colonizers and our detractors tell us are too small and will always be dependent on the largesse of larger nations. By encouraging us to mentally shift our perspective, it really liberates our minds to recognize that the world of our ancestors was as vast as the Pacific Ocean, and that Oceanians traversed its highways long before the arrival of Captain Cook. It is in the spirit of expansion that we welcome and launch the Taiwan Society for Pacific Studies, the newest Pacific Studies organization in the world. Like a new canoe that has taken years to build and has just been completed, the Taiwan Society for Pacific Studies is about to leave the safety of land and venture out into the wide open ocean where seas can be rough and the weather stormy. This, however, is a journey that our ancestors took thousands of years ago when they left beach shores and ventured out to find new and unknown lands in what we call today the Pacific Ocean. Our ancestors must have been brave men and women, for there was so much more that was unknown then than is the case today. But this doesn't mean that this new journey is going to be less difficult, because, like all long voyages, successful arrival at destination will depend on careful preparation and planning, physical and intellectual progress, and when necessary, sheer determination and tenacity when the seas become rough and hurricanes or cyclones threaten to destroy the canoe and every brave person on it. On the eve of your departure into the blue continent, may I make a few suggestions that might help you on your maiden voyage. Please take whatever you feel might be useful and discard whatever you feel will only burden and weigh you down. And since you want your canoe to skip along the surface of the ocean blue with speed and with ease, let me suggest then that you take with you just 3 baskets of sand. I call these baskets of sand because in our Rotuma mythology, it was sand poured on rock that created Rotuma. Please fill your basket. Let's call this the responsibility basket. I wove that basket, by the way. Not bad, huh? With this quote from a Paris essay titled "The Ocean in Us," in which he wrote, and I quote, "Our most important role should be that of custodians of the ocean. As such, we must reach out to similar people elsewhere in the common task of protecting the sea for the general welfare of all living things," unquote. It is this feeling of responsibility toward the ocean that led Iperi to use the term Oceania instead of Pacific for the name of his center. Given our seafaring heritage, I think we would agree with Iperi's emphasis on the importance of the ocean to all of us, particularly now that sea level rise has become an issue of pressing concern. In your second basket, let's call this inheritance basket, and that house there, Fijian Buri, is part of the Oceania Center. Please fill it with this quote from Iperi's essay titled "Pasts to Remember," and I quote, "To remove a people from their ancestral natural surroundings or vice versa, or to destroy their lands with mining, deforestation, bombing, large-scale industrial and urban developments, and the like, is to sever them not only from their traditional sources of livelihood, but also, and much more importantly, from their ancestry, their history, their identity, and their ultimate claim for the legitimacy of their existence. It is the destruction of age-old rhythms, of cyclical dramas that lock together familiar time, motion, and space. Such acts are therefore sacrilegious and of the same order of enormity as the complete destruction of all of a nation's libraries. Think the Library of Congress, the archives, the museums, the monuments, historic buildings, and all its books and other such documents, unquote. In a third basket, let's call this the identity basket because it deals with the arts. This is what he really wrote in his essay titled Our Place Within. He wrote, "We begin with what we have in common and draw inspiration from the diverse patterns that have emerged from the successes and failures in our adaptations to the influences of the sea. From there, we can range beyond the 10th horizon, securing the knowledge of the home base to which we will always return for replenishment and revision of the purposes and the directions of our journeys. We shall visit our people who have gone to the land of diaspora and tell them that we have built something, a new home for all of us. And taking a cue from the ocean's ever-flowing and encircling nature, we will travel far and wide to connect with oceanic and maritime peoples elsewhere and swap stories of voyages we have taken and those yet to be embarked on. We will show them what we have created. We will learn from them different kinds of music, dance, art, ceremonies, and other forms of cultural production. We may even together make new sounds, new rhythms, new choreographies, and new songs and verses about how wonderful and terrible the sea is, and how we cannot live without it. We will talk about the good things the ocean has bestowed on us, the damaging things we have done to them, and how we must together try to heal their wounds and protect them forever," unquote. And I put that picture here because I was here last year, I think in July, and I had the good fortune to meet some of my relatives here in Taiwan. You probably recognize who they are. The picture on the left, two indigenous friends that I met at the TV station, where I'm told this, you're here, that's you. Oh my goodness, I didn't recognize
you. Younger there.
Oh, they were very different. I guess I didn't expect you to be standing here doing all the hard work. And then, of course, to the right, that's those of you who live here know who that is. These three baskets that I've talked about, the baskets of responsibility, inheritance, and identity, will be enormously helpful as you carry out research in Oceania and among Oceanians, people of the sea. When you make landfall, all these baskets liberally on the rocks along the coastline, and new islands will form. Let me conclude then with a Perry's observation that the ocean connects us all. You here in Taiwan to the rest of us in the Pacific, and that at one time, before our colonizers arrived and carved up the Pacific into Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia, leaving out Taiwan altogether, and forced us to have passports and visas before we travel among our sea of islands, our ancestors traversed the seascapes like highways that connected one island to another. It really exhorts us to free ourselves from colonial thinking and reconnect with the larger reality of our seafaring ancestors whose world was anything but small. This is Ipeli's conclusion to the most influential essay in Pacific studies ever written, titled Our Sea of Islands. This is what Ipeli wrote in his conclusion. We are the sea, we are the ocean. We must wake up to this ancient truth and together use it to overturn all hegemonic views that aim ultimately to confine us again physically and psychologically in the tiny spaces that we have resisted as our sole appointed places and from which we have recently liberated ourselves. We must not allow anyone to belittle us again and take away our freedom. Now, I covered all of that because I think that paragraph is so beautiful and so inspirational. I would like us all to read it together and think about Ekeli's legacy. He's no longer with us, but if you get the chance, buy that book. And that book will keep you going for as long as you live. For me, it's like my Bible, because every time I read it, there's more to learn from it, to think about. So let us read it then together one more time, from the beginning, 2, 3. We are the sea, we are the ocean. We must wake up to this ancient truth and together use it to overturn all hegemonic views that aim ultimately to confine us again, physically and psychologically, in the tiny spaces that we have resisted as our sole appointed places and from which we have recently liberated ourselves. We must not allow anyone to belittle us again and take away our freedom. Thank you again for your kind invitation to address this esteemed gathering tonight. I look forward to the rest of this conference and to everything else you have planned for us during this time we have together. And that is the end of my speech. Shesha.